Hey everyone, it's Sean, the What's Up Dude here. We are back in downtown Naperville. Now, what happens when the sun goes down and the moon is bright and there might be spooks in sight? We are at the Naperville Ghost Tour and we are going to see the spooky side of this town. This is Sean, the What's Up Dude.
Question. Oh, I'm so sorry. My name is Amy, and I'll be taking you through downtown Naperville today. Anybody from? I know I asked you guys this, and you have some YouTube. Anybody else from the Naperville area? You all are. Okay. So you too.
Not currently, but I grew up here.
Okay. I'm not. I lived here, and then I moved further west. So. So Naperville was started in about 1831 by Joseph Naper. Came here from Ohio. That's why the Naper settlement. It was called Naper's Settlement, and that's why Naper Settlement was called Naper Settlement. So he actually was a lawyer in addition to being a farmer, and he did serve in the Illinois legislature with Abraham Lincoln. Naperville was a kind of sleepy little town to around the turn of the century, to the 1900s. And what actually put it on the map was the war. So it's very fitting that we're starting here because something very tragic happened here in 1946 that still reverberates through the community. Many people have felt it and they still do feel it. So that's going to be our first stop. Along the way, we're going to head down to North Central College, which has a high incidence of hauntings. It's super sad. It got down here, engineer claimed he did not see the advanced flyer, stopped, he did not see the lights, he did not see the flag. I don't know how he did this thing, any of those things. And he rammed into the rear of the advanced flyer at about 65 miles per hour. So needless to say, all the people in the end car were killed. And that was about, I am going to say 45 to 50 people. Because I've been told 45. When I count the names on here, I know I count 47. So after a while, it seemed pretty futile. It got pretty crazy down here. Lots of things were happening. Lots of people were screaming. There was a lot going on. So Mr. Kroller came back out here and he said, I would like you to move everybody who is injured and is deceased into my building. So they all went inside there. So that also led me to believe, what's going on in Kroller Manufacturing? They usually say that people who die very suddenly have no idea that they are dead. So the people who live on 4th, right over here, claim that especially around 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the crash happened, they see people walking up the street dressed like in more old-fashioned kind of clothes, but like their Sunday best. But their clothes are highly tattered and some of them are bloody. And they have no expressions on their face, and they just walk up the street, and as you approach them, they disappear. So they said they walked up to them to try and give them help, and they're just not there. Tried to talk. They seem to have a lot of trouble here with electromagnetic field. For some reason, I had a girl with an EMF detector the other night, and she said that every time I talked about the victims, it started to light up. Mm-hmm. So I said, I just feel they want to be remembered. They want people to remember. It's so common. Many, many people don't know the story. So I always wondered if it spilled over to Kroller Manufacturing. So we had talked to some people who lived here, which is now, for those of you that don't know, it's loft condos, and there are shops in there, and there used to be restaurants. Well, we spoke with a couple that used to live there, and their window faced the train station. And the woman said when they first moved in, nothing really happened. Her husband started to travel on business. And when her husband was gone, she'd be at home and she'd be in the shower, and she could hear the doorknob rattling on the door. So she decided she was going to leave the door open. So she said she peeked out a couple of times and she could see it doorway. One night, she assumed her husband came home. She felt the depression in the bed, so she rolled over to put her arm around her husband. So it seems that maybe some male spirit took a liking to her because he would show up when her husband was not there. But when her husband, yeah. So her husband would come home, and then he would say that their TV would turn on in the middle of the night. He'd hear the TV in the living room turn on. He would say that all of a sudden the radio would switch stations, like somebody was trying to find another station. So they apparently here had some electromagnetic disturbances. I can't say anything for sure. That could just be from the railroad. Don't know. But people on the street still complain about that. Like they say their lights go on and off constantly. They're flickering. They're going on and off. They call the electrician. They say we cannot find anything. There's nothing. So they say within 2 weeks they're calling them again because they're having the same problem. So, like I said, they do tend to see these apparitions when they sleep. Somebody has even claimed as they were walking they could feel like a cold hand clasp on their back, although they did not see anything. Okay, so we are going to head down this way. Is anyone familiar with North Central? If young people that here, you know about North Central? North Central. You did? Okay, so North Central was started actually around the Civil War time, and it originally was called Plainfield College because it was in Plainfield, not in Naperville. It was eventually renamed Northwestern, not like Northwestern University, it was two separate words. Then when it moved to Naperville, they renamed it to North Central College. Really, one thing that I've always really admired about that school, right from its beginning class, the first class that ever matriculated there, 40 students, it was one of the only universities in the United States that accepted women to matriculate at the time. So of the first class of 40, 3 were women, 37 were men, 3 were women. So did you guys know that it basically started as a seminary college? It was a seminary college, okay? So one of our first stories we'll get down was with the original dorm at a seminary school. They had a pretty bad ending, okay? We're going to head down here to cycle. So this is our first stop on North Central. This is Cybert Hall. It's actually one of the first dorms that was here when the college was put up pretty shortly after it moved into Naperville. So remember I said it was a seminary college? It was always owned by the United Methodist Church. It still is, but it's always been non-denominational. Like they accept students of all religions, all backgrounds. So back in the day when it was a seminary college, it used to be here, maybe on the third floor here. And he was a seminary student, and he fell in love with a girl named Margaret, who lived and he went to his dean and he said, so I think I'm going to drop out of the seminary school because I've fallen in love and I'm going to get married. And he said, are you sure that's what you really want to do? And he said, oh, absolutely. So he left the seminary, but stupidly did it before he talked to Margaret. Because he went to talk to Margaret and he said, Margaret, I'm very interested in marrying you. She said, I'm really sorry to tell you that I'm not going to marry you because I'm going to marry somebody else. Well, it broke his heart. And he was up on the third floor and he eventually hung himself up there. So students to this day see actually, before I say that, they closed that and it was not open until 1974. So when they opened it, and up to now, still say they see him walking the halls on the third floor. He's in traditional seminarian garb, like a long black robe with like a white collar. They say they try and talk to him. He doesn't talk to you, just moan at them. And he at times has passed right through somehow. They do say that he is mischievous. He does make a lot of noise. And very strangely, they claim that the windows on the side of sidewalk that face the street over here cracked unexplained. And it was still happening. dorm on the second floor here have said at night when they're laying in bed, they see like a black mist on the ceiling. When they fall asleep, they can feel pressure on their chest. They said the only way they can get it to relieve is if they yell out in their sleep or they say help or something, then it dissipates. So there have been a lot of complaints about that inside the hall. That's one that I definitely know about. It's an old dorm though, so anything is possible here. I mean, it's an old school, old dorm. Naperville's an old town. So there could be many, many ghosts lurking here that we don't really know about. But the seminary student is one of the most popular ghosts in Cyber. So we're gonna head over now to Old Main. Okay, everybody, this is Old Main. This is actually the oldest building on campus. This is the North Tower right here. This is original to the school. The other parts of it have been like heavily reconstructed. But if you notice, like a lot of the windows here are original. They look very different from these windows. The story about this building is, and it's so funny because I actually do think I have seen this. People say that at the very top, they see a light glowing in a window here. And all of a sudden it'll go out, and then the next window will light up. That will go out, and so on. So they say it's almost like somebody with a candle is like walking down the hall there. I don't know who'd be walking with a candle. I mean, there's electricity up there, so I don't know who would be walking with a candle. But that is the one story that we do hear a lot. And one night, I do believe I have seen that, where I've seen windows lighting up like in succession during the night. What's been happening on this front lawn here is that people are reporting they're seeing orbs, but they're seeing green and blue orbs that when they come down, they bounce. And I do believe it was a couple of years ago, the Naperville Sun had pictures of it on the front cover of the orbs on this lawn. Also, students have claimed that they have seen apparitions on this lawn, but when they go over to them to try and talk to them, they also disappear. So Old Main is one of the oldest buildings here. A janitor who used to work here would say that he would go up to one of the floors and he would see puddles of water. And he couldn't imagine where it was coming from. And he got in contact with the people, I guess, in maintenance, and he said, "You're going to have somebody come in because the ceiling is obviously leaking." They brought in a bunch of companies. They said, "We can discover no leaks here at all." And he said he would get his bucket and he'd go back up and the water was all gone by the time he got up there. So I've heard lots of stories about water appearing and reappearing in some of these buildings, and that's what's usually happened when someone spies it and decides to clean it up, it disappears.
Was this always like an instructional building, or was it a
This
residence?
building has gone through, this woman went to college here.
Oh, yeah.
So we were just talking about that.
It had like everything. Like
It's been
some
everything.
Residents.
Back in the day, yes, it was a resident hall. And there was one student, there's another story, there was a student who was a sleepwalker. And at night, the resident advisor, I guess, went through checking beds and they couldn't find it. So they heard a disturbance up on the top floor and they went up there and he was sitting crouched in the corner and he said to them, "Can't you see it? Can't you see it?" And I said, "Can we see what?" And he said, "There's blood running down the walls in here." That's what he just kept saying. But he was known to be a sleepwalker. Maybe had a vivid imagination. No proving it or disproving it, guys. Like I said, I'm just repeating to you the stories we've been told. So yes, it's gone through a lot of iterations. I do believe now it's an administrative building. But yes, and back in the day, in like around 1851, 1861, when this was built, I do believe this was a residence hall.
1949, right before the Great Depression.
Can everybody hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
This is, I really need like some people. They've never supplied me with like, this is Piper, built in 1929, right before the Great Depression. Very many famous people have spoken here. Martin Luther King Jr., Barack Obama spoke here. Robert Frost, the poet, spoke here. I very recently saw the Fonz speak here. And he was great. But I was just telling these people, I was in the building. We had to purchase our books at Anderson's Books before we came. And they would give you a number to have it signed. We were up in the 400s. And we were sitting there, and I was kind of in the back of the hall. And I was sitting there waiting to get my book signed. And I said to them, you know what, you guys, I'm going to have to go outside. I said, I just got I'm not a sensitive or anything. I'm really not. I just got a very eerie, weird feeling in here. And this is the building. And this is even before I knew any of these stories, okay? So the most famous ghost in Naperville, his name is Charlie Yellowboots, okay? He was the janitor in this building for about 50 years. Charlie Yellowboots never got married, so his life was his work. And he loved this building and he took very good care of it. So people say to this day they can hear the squish, squish, squish of those boots at night, and they say they hear keys jangling. Now, unfortunately, for some odd reason, he does not like to be, he's a pretty benevolent spirit. He's very like an overseer of the building still. He does not like to be called Charlie, which is his given name. So apparently there were a bunch of students who snuck into the building at night and they went down the halls going, Charlie, Charlie. But he did not like that at all. And he caused some disturbances that night. Unfortunately, Charlie did hang himself in the janitor's closet, which is now the men's bathroom on the second floor.
Oh.
So men say when you go in there, there's an area of the wall in there. If you rap on the wall, it's kind of like you get a hollow sound. All of a sudden, Charlie will rap back at you. So I've heard that story quite a few times. Now there's the famous story of the woman in white. There was a performance going on here in about 1956. This woman's great nephew, she was an elderly woman, she was about 94 years old. He was premiering a play here. But he invited her, he wanted her to come. And she came, she showed up in her beautiful white dress with like blingy stuff on it. They sat her in seat G42, right in the main area. Well, during the show, she was sitting next to people, next to other people. And she kept doing this during the show. And they thought she was sleeping, so they very gently would move her over. And she would do it she'd flop to the other side, and eventually they called an usher. And they said, do you think she's asleep, or, she's fallen into a pretty deep sleep and she keeps falling over? Well, they took her out of the auditorium. They brought her into a bathroom downstairs, which is now the accessible bathroom. And a doctor came and said, this woman is deceased. So they did not know what to do with her during the show, so they closed off the bathroom and kept her in there. So those who use the bathroom now say they smell a very cloying woman's perfume. And they say it's not like a modern herbally light smelling perfume. It's like old-fashioned and heavy and flowery. And lots of people say when they're sitting near seat, when they're sitting near seat G42 that they can actually get a whiff of her perfume. There is another specter in here, they call him the clapper, and he's up in the balcony. He will, all of a sudden, in the middle of a show for no reason or a performance, just stand up and start clapping. So he's greatly disturbed a lot of people in the balcony, so they've called an usher. And the ushers come up and they're like, can you show us where he is? They're like, we're not sure where he is, but we hear him. So the ushers have said they have never found anybody up there clapping. And they have never themselves heard it. Another story about this building is, it is actually built on top of an old farmhouse. They do know that in the 1920s, in the early 1920s, a young girl did die in that house. She fell down the cellar steps and broke her neck. So one night, there was a professor working here up on the second floor. And he said he kept hearing somebody drinking at the water fountain. So he said he walked out into the hallway and there was a small girl. She was wearing what looked like a prairie-style dress. And as soon as she saw him, she started to run. And he said, no, honey, please don't run away from me. There's a staircase down here. Don't run away, and I don't know if you see it because it's dark. And he ran after her, and he said he heard a noise. And when he looked at the bottom of the staircase, there was a pool of blood there. So he called campus security immediately. They came. He said, listen, this is what happened to me. I need you to go check this out. And they came back. They said, sir, we are so sorry, but there's nothing there. So odd happenings happen inside the home. But I will tell you, we've always been told that all of the hauntings there are very benevolent ghosts. They all coexist very well together, and they are convinced that Charlie Yellowgoose is still in the village. So, yeah, I'm going to believe that one because that's probably the most popular story I've heard about this building. And if you mention Charlie Yellowboots to anybody on campus, they all know who he is. Okay, we are going to head down to St. Peter and Paul Church. Okay, this is St. Peter and Paul Catholic Church. It's been here since about 1921. But what you are looking at is the second iteration of St. Peter and Paul Catholic Church, because in 1922, it burned to the ground. And let me tell you what happened that night. I'm going to tell you the whole story about it. It has never been proven. It has never been verified. But the evidence is really, really kind of, it seems pretty concrete to me. On June 3rd, 1922, there was a very, very large Ku Klux Klan meeting in Plainfield. Okay, we know where Plainfield is. Everybody knows. It's not all that far from here, okay? The way the roads were laid out back then, it was even closer because the country roads were laid out very different than our roads now. There were about 50,000 Klan members at this meeting. It's hard to believe that 50,000 people only belonged to the Ku Klux Klan. And even in 1922. And at the time, there were very, very high anti-Catholic sentiments in this area. Well, that night they inducted 3,000 new members. And on that night, it is thought that those members, to prove their mettle to the Klan, rode out to St. Peter and Paul Church and burned it to the ground. Like I said, it has never been proven, but it looks a little too coincidental for something like that to happen. And unfortunately, it awakened one of Naperville's most famous, he could be somebody's favorite, I don't know, ghost. They call him the Screaming Priest. He is said to be in the basement here. Many people are very, very frightened to go in the basement here because they say as soon as they go down there, they feel his presence, and he comes out of nowhere and rushes at them. So now my feeling is a little bit different about the Screaming Priest. I feel really strongly that he's trying to save people. I think he doesn't know he's dead, and I think he's trying to get people to get out of the basement. He doesn't want them down there. He wants them out of the building. So I think he is actually shepherding people out of the building because he is convinced the building is still on fire. But one of the most famous ghosts from St. Peter and Paul, and I just did some more research on this, and I think I found something really interesting that you guys are going to really like. She's called the Weeping Bride, and she was apparently left at the altar by her groom. And she still has not gotten over that because she's still at the altar. Her dress has decayed over the years. Now, I'm sure everybody that's from Naperville has heard the story about the clip-clopping horses at night, especially around 2 o'clock in the morning, all around this historic district. I have a friend who lives on School Street, and she swears that she has heard the clopping, and she's gotten out of bed, put her coat on, and walked down the street, but has seen nothing. I have to also equate that clopping with the horsemen that came here and burnt down the church in 1922. So I think it's a combination of both. Well, anyway, the Weeping Bride was a girl who lived in town. She came from a very wealthy family. I just found out who that family was. Has anybody heard in Naperville, there used to be a brewing company here back at the turn of the century called Stanger Brewing? It was one of the Stanger girls. And her groom, she met him at a dance one night. And everybody, he was thought to kind of be a grifter. And after about a month, she went home and told her parents they were in love and they were getting married. Well, her dad was not very happy with that. So I think what ultimately happened was, I have a feeling that dad bought him off and ran him out of town. But he agreed to the wedding just to make her happy because he didn't know how to break that to her. So he bought her a horse right before she got married. They dressed her in her wedding dress. They put her on the horse so she could ride to church. She harnessed her horse up out here, went in. She's still in there. Her groom never showed. I think I found out who her prospective groom was. I think it was Adolf Kors, who took a train out of Naperville. He was run out of town. He went and settled in Colorado. And to get even with her dad, started his own brewing company, which is Kors, and is still there now. So I did
in the church?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, did she die in the church?
No, I'm going to tell you how she died. So as time went on, people kept seeing her, and they said her dress is getting more and more tattered and dirtier. But she is there, she was crying, she was weeping. What she used to do is get on her horse every night and ride around the historic district looking for him. Well, one night she never came back. And her dad found her frozen to death on her horse in downtown Naperville. So they still call her the weeping bride, and apparently there are very many people that work in the chapel here, getting the chapel ready for service and everything, who refuse to work there anymore because they say they can't stand her screaming and crying. It drives them crazy. They hear it all the time. So apparently they have a lot of trouble getting people to work in the chapel. They say, I don't want to deal with that, I don't want to hear it. So I feel that the clip clocket that's heard around here is a combination of the weeping bride riding on her horse looking for Adolf Kors, or it is some of the Ku Klux Klansmen who rode here and burned down the church. Now, the church school also burned down in 1911, but was rebuilt. It was affiliated before it became St. Peter and Paul. It was affiliated with a different church, but that has also rebuilt, and that is the original rebuild from 1911. I have to say, I do not get easily spooked at all. I really don't. But since I've been doing this, and I did actually shop at the Redranium, I do feel, and I'm not a sensitive, and I do feel weird when I come into this area. I have to say, someone the other night told me she was having trouble breathing. So notice where we're standing right now. This was where the house was. Because when I first started working for U.S. Ghost Adventures, I lived in Naperville, but we moved west, like many years ago. We live out west now, like for 35 years. But we used to come here a lot. And I'm standing here, and I said, okay, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's this house. But clearly that house says 21 on it. So when I first started, and I don't come down to Naperville, I do work at Ellsworth, but I don't come down to this area at all. So I came down here and I called and I said, can you tell me what happened to Maine West Benton? And the woman in the Chamber of Commerce said, oh, the old red geranium? I said, yeah. She said, well, the city of Naperville raised it and made it a parking lot. So I said, oh, that's really interesting. Because when I first lived here, I used to come here to shop a lot. A young couple owned it. They bought it in 1993. Their names were Kelly and Joe Tabari. Kelly was an artist, and it was a great little house. It looked very much like this one, and on the side she painted these beautiful wildflower murals, and it was just a great place to shop. Her shop was impeccable. She had really sweet things in there. I will tell you, plug! This is one of my favorite restaurants in Naperville. Has anybody ever eaten here? This is an amazing restaurant. It is a chain. I mean, there's one in Downers, one in Wheaton, one in St. Charles, one in Geneva. Do love this one though. Now, can they see the plate up there? This is the Old Nichols Library. This library was actually started by a bequest from James Nichols. James was a very beloved professor at North Central College, and growing up, he was very, very poor, but he loved to read, and his mom and dad always managed to buy him books. So when he died, he put in his will, I am bequeathing $10,000 to the city of Naperville. Back in 1875, that was a ton of money. And he said, I would like them to start a library because I would like every child in Naperville to have access to books. And I love that. I love that forever. And when you go into this Giannina and you head towards the left where that little slitty window is, they have the original cornerstone of the Nichols Library in there. So I love it. Anyway, lots of stories about this place, and I will tell you, this is where I had my first and only paranormal experience on this tour 25 years ago. Back then it didn't look like this. This was just kind of like a very big lawn that kind of tilted down this way, and we were standing out on the lawn, and I was with my husband, and I was listening to the tour guide, and I really wasn't thinking of anything. All of a sudden I felt my husband go like this on my arm, and I said, oh thanks dear, and I looked over and there was no one there, and I was like, oh my God. And I remember the sweatshirt I was wearing my big heavy New Buffalo, very, very stuffy sweatshirt. I mean, it definitely was very thick. That person, whoever squeezed me, squeezed pretty hard. So I was like, oh my. Now back 25 years ago, there was no Ghost Adventures on TV. No one talked about their paranormal experiences. So I never said anything. Never said anything. And it took me about a week, and I said to my husband, can I ask you a question? When we were standing in front of the Nichols Library, where did you go? He said, oh, he goes, I'm sorry. He said, I saw someone I knew, and I just went down to say hi to him. I said, well, when you left me, somebody touched me. He goes, what do you mean someone touched you? I said, no, somebody really touched me, like squeezed my shoulder, and I thought it was you. He said, it wasn't me. So I said, oh boy. So I said, I definitely was touched. He said, well, remember our tour guide gave us his card? Why don't you email him? And I was embarrassed. I said, oh, I don't want to do that. He said, no, do it. So I did. Within a half hour, he answered me. And he said, I have to tell you, you are not the first person that has said that to me. He said, let me ask you a question. Book cover? And I said, oh my. Well, I'm a teacher. I said, I do read like 15 books a month. I said, I am a voracious book reader. He said, well, there was a man back in the day in Naperville who was a lawyer, and he used to do a lot of his work out here in the library. He was a bookosaurus. He said, I think he felt you were a kindred spirit, and he wanted to let you know that. So he came up behind you and he squeezed your shoulder. He said, but don't feel bad about it. You're not the first person. I said, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. But lots of interesting stories about this. When it was a library, the librarians would say they would come in the morning, and books that they had on the counter would have reshelved themselves overnight, and other books were on tables lying open like somebody had been there reading. They complained of many, many cold spots in the library. They complained of mists. Now, the bartenders in here are still complaining of those mists, especially my favorite thing, going down to the basement. They say they see a mist on the stairs, but they're afraid to go through it. So they kind of like just wait. And they say a lot of times when they check back, the mist has dissipated. But they say they'll go down in the basement, they'll find glasses smashed, glasses moved. They say like every now and then they'll find bottles of liquor missing, like totally missing. Another thing, I'm trying to think of what someone just told me about this, but apparently the wait staff has seen a lot of apparitions at tables, and when they walk over there, they're no longer there. As they walk over to serve them, they're no longer there. So I don't know if everybody knows, but behind here is a replica. I think it is a replica. I don't think it's an actual Civil War cannon, but there were Civil War internists back here. Those people were since moved to the Naperville Cemetery down the road. But I was going to tell you the story of a book. It's one of the most credible ghost books about Naperville. It's called Agatha's Journey. Has anybody ever heard of it? Okay, there was a home at 526 West Franklin Street. And the family that lived there claimed they were haunted by Civil War soldiers. I said, oh, it's from back here. And the wife formed a relationship, like a really credible relationship, with a ghost named Agatha, who said she had come here from Ireland and lived in that house. So, now according to Diane Ladley, who is like the #1 ghost advisor out here, she says that is the most credible Naperville ghost story. So if you ever want to read it, it's a great read. It's called Agatha's Journey, and it took place right over here at 526 West Franklin Street. The family was from Canada. They have since moved. But she chronicles her like 20-year relationship with Agatha. And it's very, very interesting. And she'll tell you about all her disturbances and how she was afraid for her kids, but they said they never felt fear in the house. So she was afraid of the Civil War soldiers. Apparently the kids weren't. Okay, does anybody have any questions for me? I know there's a few people I'm leaving here, but I know there's 9 people continuing on with me. If you are leaving, I hope you had a wonderful evening, and I hope you have a great Halloween. Okay? So everybody coming with me, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's not necessary. Thank you. Okay, those that are coming with me, come on over here. We're going to head this way. Okay. So this is the former home of the Kendall family. Now the Kendalls, Mr. Kendall is one of the first mayors of Naperville. His son Judd went into World War I at the age of 20. And Judd, they do believe, is still haunting this house. Judd, unfortunately, was taken prisoner in World War I and tortured. And they did kill him when he was 21 years old. So, they always say when young spirits like that die from far away from home, they tend to come back to where they were the happiest. So they think John's ghost is still here. So now it's the Jefferson Hill Shops, it's an Indian restaurant, there's this pub, there's a hair salon in here, there's some law offices. People have accosted Judd here. Now, Judd actually is a war hero. There's a memorial to him down at the Riverwalk over here. They say when they see him, he is very clean cut looking. He is wearing a green shirt with a green tie. And they say he is probably one of Naperville's most benevolent ghosts. He's still trying to protect people. Now, he knows as a ghost, he can't do anything if he sees something. He has a very bad habit, though, of pulling the fire alarm. And a lot of times, it's so funny because, like I said, I work like a couple of blocks away from out walking at lunch. I'll hear the fire alarm, and I'm like, really? It really is going off again. So I have heard it myself here. But Judd is buried his remains are in the Sommet American Cemetery in France. His mom got to go, apparently he had been gone a couple of years, and she got to go on a trip with other Army moms who had lost sons to the Sommet. So now, the bartenders in Quigley's claim that when they're behind the bar and they're pouring drinks, they can feel somebody behind them breathing. Now somebody has said, oh my God, look in the mirror. And they have seen her in the mirror, but they don't see her reflected. Like they don't actually see her, but they can see her in the mirror. They have also said that in the Indian restaurant, somebody heard in the kitchen a male voice say, "Don't touch." And they looked down and there was a little girl who had gotten away from her family and come into the kitchen. And they said so clearly they heard a voice say, "Don't touch," because she was going in like towards where the stoves were. So a waitress who works at Quigley said one day she could run a pill and she was getting ready to leave and she could hear somebody say, "It's storming outside." And she went, "Oh my God." And as soon as she opened the door, she saw that it was really storming. So he is probably Naperville's, next to Charlie Yellowbird's, probably the most benevolent ghost in Naperville.
There was also one more place we went to. The story's a little bit too graphic for social media, but the gist of it is that there was a serial unaliver in Naperville, and he was responsible for 13 to 14 people that lost their lives. And one night he tried to take someone to his house, and it didn't go well, and they both ended up passing away. And now this restaurant that is in the picture that I'm showing, it used to be a bowling alley, according to the ghost tour person. They were saying that it used to be a bowling alley that he went to, and now they rebuilt it and it is a restaurant, and the owners say that they have a hard time keeping women as hostess because they constantly feel a presence or something trying to grab their neck. So this is something that's ongoing, so they think that the serial unaliver is still haunting the streets of Naperville.
Biggest worry was not that the tombstone was there, but is Catherine Fallon buried under the refrigerator in the lantern? They had a lot of disturbances here, strange things happening, like just weirdnesses, where somebody would say, same thing as at Quigley's, they'd say, look at the woman in the mirror over the bar, but you would turn around and she wasn't at the table. And they'd go, she's still there. She's not at the table, okay? Strange things would happen. So there's a theory. There's a theory about it, though. The real Catherine Fallon is actually buried at St. Peter and Paul with her husband Michael and Michael's sister Anne O'Donnell. But her tombstone in St. Peter and Paul says Catherine, it says O'Donnell on it. But this one said Catherine Fallon, which was her real name. Okay, right where Rosebud is right now, you know the Beetleman Furniture Company over here? The Beetlemans owned the masonry company here that made all the tombstones for Naperville Cemetery. So the thought was that the people from the Rainbow Cafe, when they were replacing their refrigerator, they wanted it on very level land. They went over there and said, do you happen to have a tombstone that you could spare that we could put under our refrigerator? Okay, so I think it was a test tombstone that they were practicing on the masons for carving them. So they said, you know what, go ahead and take this one. And it happened to say Catherine Fallon. So they do believe that her body was never buried. They do believe it is at St. Peter and Paul. So, the people, when they bought the lantern, they redid everything. They bought all new refrigerators. They took the tombstone and they put it in a place of honor. And they said, I smell the burgers. They said after that happened, all of a sudden it got super quiet. And a lot of the cold spots, the really bad things happening here, kind of. So they say now, people say that she will come sit with you at your table. And yes, you can see her reflected in the mirror, but you can't really see her at the table. But they know there's a presence there. And they say, if you take your eye off your beer at the table, beer disappears from your glass. So, I have had an experience. But I've had a weird experience like that too, where I know nothing was near my drink, and it tipped over and spilled. And I'm like, no, you guys, no one was near it, right? They said, no one touched it. The table didn't even move. We're all sitting here. And I'm like, very weirdly, all of a sudden the drink tipped and spilled off the, and we all sat there just watching it spilling. I'm like, did you just see that? So I've had an experience in here, but just it wasn't, I don't know if it was paranormal, so I don't qualify it as paranormal. Yeah. But Catherine O'Fallon is very definitely buried at some point. So
she made burgers and beer.
Yeah, and that's the thing. She's just very happy that they honored her by displaying her tombstone behind the bar. And they all stopped. all the craziness. They say weird stuff
Yeah,
still goes
I know
on.
like 4 people that have worked here recently.
Yeah.
They all say every time they go in the basement, it's just, they run out of there.
What is it with the basement in this town? It's always so weird. You'll always hear the stories with the water accumulating. It's usually on the top or second floor. And the basement stories, the haunted basement stories. I have never heard as many haunted basement stories as I hear in this town.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you guys, this is your last stop. Does everybody know where their car is? I always ask people that. I had a couple the other day, they said, oh my God, our car's at the train station. I'm like, you have a little walk ahead of you. So, yeah, we travel. So I will take that from you. Thank you so very much. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed.
Thank you.
And I hope you all have a great Halloween. Have a spooky one. Have a spooky Halloween.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's so unnecessary, but I appreciate it.
Alrighty, everybody, the tour's over, so I'm headed down the streets of downtown Naperville and headed back to the train station. A little bit of a walk, but I hope you all enjoyed the tour and enjoyed all the spooky stories. And we will see you next time.
Alrighty, we made it back in one piece from the ghost tour. We're back in the car and about to head home, but just wanted to thank everyone for watching and hope you have a great Halloween season. This is the last Halloween video I will do for 2025.
Please like, share, and subscribe so that I can explore new areas and go to more places in the future.